Shalom. Or Shalom, brothers and sisters. Today I want to talk about the calendar. The calendar in use today is functional but wrong. It is wrong basically because it is not God's calendar. It's not the true calendar. To understand, let's start with the scriptures. Genesis 1:14. And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. A calendar is simply how we define and organize a year of time. A basic calendar shows the days of the year grouped in terms of weeks and months. We use calendars to establish dates for seasons, holidays, and many other events. In short, just as a clock is important because it lets us know what time of the day it is, a calendar is important because it lets us know what time of the year it is. It lets us know the season. Leviticus 23:4. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. Without the true calendar, we mess up the feast days of the Lord. Sadly, we've had it wrong for a long time because we have depended upon man's calendar, the wrong calendar. Given how great our God is, he already knew we would do this. Jubilees 6:37. For this reason the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day, and they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. In simple terms, in order to observe properly a feast day or even a Sabbath as instructed by God, God's people need to know what it is, how we are to observe it, where it is to occur, and finally when. This means we need a calendar. Moreover, we need God's true calendar. This is what I believe is God's calendar for us. And I will show you through the scriptures based upon the feast days, and you can then decide for yourself. It's time to prepare. The calendar of the Most High. Perhaps one of the first things to notice about God's calendar is that the days and months are not names, but numbers. For instance, we'll have the first month of the year, the second month of the year, the third month of the year, etc. Likewise, we have the first day of the week, and the second day of the week, and the third day of the week, and so on. This simplicity also makes it clear when feast days occur. For instance, on the 14th day, the first month, is the Lord's Passover, which is followed by the week-long Feast of Unleavened Bread. God's calendar also has what are called the divisions of the year. Now, although a division may overlap with a season, it is not defined as a season, but as being 13 weeks long. The first division begins on the first day of the first week of the first month of the year. We then proceed 13 weeks, which means months 2, 3, and 4. In the fourth month, on the first day of the second week, is the second division of the year. We then proceed 13 weeks again, which means months 5, 6, and 7. I should point out here that during month 5, we have the Feast of Weeks. It is not a specific day, but a time of harvesting determined by the crops. It's also known as the Feast of Fruits, or First Fruits, of the wheat harvest. To continue, in the 7th month, on the first day of the third week, is the third division of the year. Indeed, the 7th month of God's calendar is actually the middle of the year, and a very busy month indeed. The first day of the month is the day of trumpets. Sound the shofar, brothers and sisters. The 10th day of the month is the day of atonement. Sound the trumpet again. Do not work, afflict your soul, and make an offerings made by fire to the Lord. Now, Christ was the ultimate sacrifice, so whether or not we should keep these feast days the same way, in the sense of burnt offerings and all those things, is the subject of a different teaching. My focus is simply on the calendar. The 15th day of the month begins the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days as well. So grab your tents. Similarly to the Passover, it is in remembrance of the Exodus from Egypt. However, unlike the Passover, the tents are a reminder of having to live in tents or booths and constantly moving from place to place in the wilderness for 40 years as a result of our disobedience and lack of faith. Finally, around the final week of the 7th month is the Feast of Ingathering in the end of the year. It is when you have gathered in the laborers or crops out of the field. On man's calendar it is the end of September. In other words, it is the end of the growing year. We then proceed 13 weeks again, which means months 8, 9, and 10. On the first day of the 4th week, or 22 of the month, is the 4th and final division of the year. We again proceed 13 weeks, which means months 11, 12, and 13. This completes exactly 364 days. God's calendar has one other bit of information: the days of remembrance. These are 4 days of remembrance which are tied to the new moon. The first day of remembrance occurs on the new moon of the first month and is associated with the opening of Noah's Ark. Let me clarify. It is not the first day of the month. It is whenever the new moon of that month occurs. The second day of remembrance is on the new moon of month 4. The third day of remembrance is on the new moon of month 7. The fourth day of remembrance is on the new moon of month 10. Brothers and sisters, what you have before you, I believe, is God's calendar for his people. Also, don't forget that the 7th day of every week, of which there are 52, is a Sabbath, a day of rest and communion with the Lord. Given that we've been using man's calendar, the thing that has to be determined now is, can we tell from the scriptures what the first month actually is? And if so, can we also zero in on an actual first day of the year for God's people? In this way, he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the 4th, those 6 portals in the east. Exodus 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. According to the Gregorian calendar which we use today, the first month of the year is January, basically during the winter season. However, on God's true calendar, the first month of the year is defined by an event, the Passover. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. So a lamb for the Passover is secured by the 10th day of the first month of the year. And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. The 14th day of the first month is the Passover. The Passover meal is in remembrance of the angel of the Lord passing over the houses of the Israelites before their exodus from Egypt, the land of bondage. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper door posts of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire, and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. God told us that this feast, the feast of the Passover during the first month of the year, shall commemorate the exodus of our forefathers from ancient Egypt. It is a feast we were to keep annually throughout the generations. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. Some birds instinctively fly south for the winter for food. The warm climate doesn't hurt either. Most sea turtles lay their eggs around the end of spring and beginning of summer. The months are warmer. Similarly, salmon make their journey from the open sea back to their home rivers to spawn like clockwork. How do these creatures know? Moreover, the feast of Passover not only indicates the first month of the year, it indirectly tells us the season. Exodus 12:5. Your lamb should be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. Sheep are seasonal breeders. Now, conception rates can vary, but the basics are quite simple. Each year, sheep breed in periods of decreasing day length. In other words, the fall or autumn, when daylight is decreasing in length, is the breeding season. During the winter months, the female sheep, ewe, is pregnant. Once the days become warmer and longer than the nights, lambing, which is when sheep begin giving birth to their lambs, begins. In short, it is in the spring that you will be able to acquire a male of the first year without blemish. So when does spring arrive? Simply defined, spring is when the days become longer than the nights, the weather relatively warmer, and the plants begin to grow. Technically, the equinox is when the length of day and night is the same. Thus, the day following the spring equinox is the first day of spring. Enoch 72. And during this period, the day becomes daily longer, and the night nightly shorter to the 30th morning. In the year 2021, the equinox occurs on March 20th. Therefore, the Passover feast 14 days later is Saturday, April 3rd, in the evening. And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. If we overlap the first day of God's calendar with March 21st of the Gregorian calendar, we can identify other dates. We simply count the number of days from the equinox. With the equinox on March 20th, the first day is plus 1 day, or March 21st. Passover is plus 14 days, or April 3rd. Trumpets is plus 169 days, or September 5th. Atonement is plus 178 days, or September 14th. And Tabernacles is plus 183 days, or September 19th. Don't worry, I'll provide a summary of all this at the end of this teaching. It is simple when the equinox is on Saturday on man's calendar. Unfortunately, man's calendar is out of sync with God's design. On man's calendar, the equinox can occur any day of the week. It is equivalent to the first day of the week being any day of the week. For example, the first day of the year and month on man's calendar for the year 2021 was a Friday. What about other years? In the book of Jubilees, God warned us of what would happen if we did not simply observe the years according to his design. Jubilee 6. But if they do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their season, and the years will be dislodged from this order. And they will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances. And all the children of Israel will forget, and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons, and seasons, and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. Man's design of the world is not the Creator's design. Man's calendar has years of different length, as well as months of varying length. One must wonder, why on earth would we have a different number of days for each month? Logic dictates that the first day of the year should be on the first day of the first month of the year. So what is a month? A year divided up into equal periods, a period of time between successive months, 28 days, 4 weeks. Calendars designed by man violate the assumption of equal periods of time. Many people today believe the moon and the month are related. The word month and moon are cognates, meaning that they have similar spellings, meanings, or even sounds. True cognate words have a common root, like the word astronomy has a common root across French, German, and other languages. Still, it is commonly taught, or at least believed, that the month is based upon the phases or cycles of the moon. However, the cycle of the moon is actually reported as 29.5 days, or 29 days, 12 hours in length. The most popular calendar in use today started with Rome, which borrowed from the Greek and Latin systems. It had only 10 months, which ranged from 28 to 31 days in length. August was called Sextilia, meaning sixth. Then we had Septem, Octo, Novem, and Decem, which are the Latin numerical prefixes for 7, 8, 9, and 10 respectively, giving us the months of September through December. Somewhat ironically, what we now know as the third month, March, was actually the first month, and the year was 304 days long. Eventually, though, the Roman calendar was modified, which resulted in the Roman Republic calendar, or Republican calendar. The major change with the Roman Republic calendar was the addition of January and February. However, because these two new months were added to the beginning of the year rather than to the end, the months of September to December became numerically out of place. With a month consisting of 28 to 31 days, this resulted in 355 days in a year. Jubilee 6. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. The Chinese calendar year can be from 353 to 385 days long. Typically, the Chinese calendar has a shortage of about 10 or 11 days in every lunar year. As a result, they add a whole leap month every few years. Curiously, they do not actually recognize it as a 13th month, but rather as a repeat month. However, the Ethiopian calendar recognizes 13 months. Their first 12 months are each 30 days long for a total of 360 days, but their 13th month has 5 days, or 6 days of a leap year. This creates another 365 or 366 days for a year. Notice that it requires a month that is less than a full week long. Surprisingly, the Hebrew calendar has months that alternate between 29 and 30 days in length. This results in only 354 days for a year. Thus, every 2 or 3 years, they add a 13th month. More importantly, the modern Hebrew calendar is based upon the Babylonian calendar. Indeed, names of many other months clearly resemble the Babylonian names. Jumping to 45 BC, Julius Caesar commissioned a calendar with a year of 365 and a quarter days and 12 months. Now, you may have thought it was strange that the calendar once only had 304 days or 354 days, or a month that was only a week long. But this new calendar meant that each year had an extra quarter of a day, or 6 hours, creating an entire extra day every 4 years. Around 1582, Pope Gregory XIII replaced the Julian calendar with a new model that someone else had designed. Nonetheless, today it is known as the Gregorian calendar. The interest in the calendar was that its design was believed to be more in sync with the seasons. Yes, with the seasons, not with the moon. Nevertheless, in the Gregorian calendar, we have 7-day weeks and 52 to 53 weeks per year. A month still ranged from 28 to 31 days, again providing a total of 365 or 366 days, but with February having only 28 or 29 days. The 29th day was if it was a leap year. Brothers and sisters, what the world does is create a lot of confusion to hide the truth. I can't help but think of 1 Corinthians 14:33, for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. For those who actually believe the sun takes an extra 6 hours to complete its annual journey, let me share some truth. Every man-made calendar I reviewed required adjustments because it did not accurately account for a year or the seasons, thus the leap concept. The leap year problem is compounded for those who have the misfortune, or perhaps fortune, of being born on a leap day such as February 29th, since in general it only occurs every 4 years. I believe after 40 years of life, they would technically only have had 10 birthdays. What will those youngsters do with so much time? So, what is really going on with the leap? Permit me to first demonstrate the problem with a simple test you can do yourself. Find a couple of friends to time you. When you say start, your friends count soundly to themselves while you walk a distance to and back that you believe will take exactly 1 minute. You simultaneously start your stopwatch, but don't watch it. As soon as you complete the walk, say time, and then everyone writes down how many seconds to the half second it took to complete the walk. Compare times with the stopwatch. Did anyone record more than a minute, less than a minute, exactly a minute? Did anyone match the stopwatch? Now, unless you're all robots or in the same band, most likely your counts differed. The counts may have differed by only 1 second. More importantly, depending upon which measure or count of time you use, the time was either longer or shorter than what you you had recorded. To someone who counts fast, you will seem to arrive late, and that is, the minute has already passed. And to someone who counts slow, you will seem to arrive early, in other words, before the minute was up. The point is that the error is in the measure of a second represented by how fast or slow one counted. Recall Genesis 1:14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." The length of a day and the length of a year is determined by the sun that God created and put into the firmament. A day is defined by God as the amount of time it takes for the sun to complete one cycle around the earth. Man divided the day into hours, minutes, or even seconds. Man's measurement of a day is 24 hours. An hour is comprised of 60 minutes and a minute of 60 seconds. The lowest quantity is the second from which the minute and hour are subsequently determined. But what is a second? It is here that the limitation of man is manifested and applied to calendars in the form of a leap. In 2019, man said not defined. The second is defined by taking the fixed numerical value of the cesium frequency, the unperturbed ground state hyperfine transition frequency of the cesium-133 atom, to be 9,192,631,770 when expressed in unit hertz. Okay, but what is a second to God? Basically, this second is faster than God's second, resulting in the sun seeming to arrive about 6 hours late. Any deviation in the second is magnified over time. Your friend, who was short by just 1 second in their counting, will be a full minute short after just 60 identical walks and timings. Imagine how far off their count would be after a full year. The extra 6 hours that man said is needed for the sun to get back to its starting point in the sky simply reflects the error in man's attempt to define the interval of God's second. God's second puts the sun right where it belongs, and when it belongs, in exactly 364 days. No leap year needed. The man-defined second is not God's second. Man's calendar is not God's calendar. In order to adjust for these issues, man implemented a leap year. Even today, we still have what is called daylight savings time. How is it saving daylight by moving our clocks forward then backward by 1 hour twice a year? A day is determined by the movement of the sun across the sky. A week is comprised of 7 days. A month is comprised of weeks. The question becomes, how many weeks comprise a month? That answer is actually provided by the length of a year given in weeks and days, the total of which God tells us exactly. Part 5. The Calendar Truth. The Most High tells us exactly how many days comprise a year. Genesis 1:14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years." Jubilee 6:32. And command thou the children of Israel, that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, and these will constitute a complete year. And they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. Enoch 74:12. And the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day until eternity, but complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days. Jubilee 6:38. For this reason I command and testify to thee, that thou mayest testify to them. For out of thy death thy children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons, and seasons, and Sabbaths, and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. Genesis 1:16. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Enoch 72:37. As he rises, so he sets, and decreases not, and rests not, but runs day and night, and his light is 7-fold brighter than that of the moon. But as regards size, they are both equal. The sun and the moon are the same size, but the sun is much brighter. Also, although it may look like the sun goes up and down, it is actually simply moving out of view over the horizon. Indeed, it moves continually, day and night, following its established path around the circle of the earth. Genesis 2, 1-3. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. God made the seventh day a holy day to be set apart from the other days. There is no eighth day. We end with 7, Shabbat, Shabbat, and thus refer to 7 days as a week. Other than when some groups such as the Russians and the ancient Etruscans experimented with different lengths of weeks, a week is always 7 days. A day does not simply appear nor disappear from the week. Likewise, the number of days in a year does not change, nor does the number of days in a month. Therefore, given 364 days in a year and 7 days in a week, we have 52 weeks in a year exactly. Jubilee 630. And all the days of the commandment will be 52 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. Thus it is engraven and ordained on the heavenly tablets. So if God states that there are exactly 364 days in a year, exactly 52 weeks of 7-day weeks, but what about the month? Man gave names to months, as well as days based upon Greek and Roman gods, goddesses, emperors, Latin designations, and so forth. Man gave a month from 28 to 31 days and altered the number of months in a year. Indeed, at one point in history, man had 10 months in the calendar year. From the scriptures, we know that there are at least 11 months. Deuteronomy 1:3. And it came to pass in the 40th year in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, that Moses spake unto the children of Israel according to all that the Lord had given him in commandment unto them. Hopefully by now you fully appreciate that the month does not coincide with the cycles of the moon. If it did, then one would expect the month to begin or end based upon the cycle of the moon. It does not. In fact, in the year 2020, the first full moon was on January 10, and the new moon on the 24th. The second full moon was on February 9th, and the second new moon was on the 23rd. Indeed, neither the full moon nor the new moon was even near the first day of the month. Enoch 73:3, and her rising and setting change every month. In other words, the cycle of the moon does not begin with the month, nor does it necessarily end with the month. Indeed, the course of the moon has variations. Enoch 74:4, and in certain months she alters her settings, and in certain months she pursues her own peculiar course. What is true is that each month tends to have at least one full moon and one new moon. A full moon can occur at any day of the month. It does not have to be the first day of the month. God tells us 52 weeks and 7 days. Thus, 7-day weeks give either 21, 28, or 35 days for a month. God also tells us 364 days per year exactly. And only when we divide 364 by the 28-day month do we get 13 months per year exactly. No partial days, weeks, or months involved. Moreover, the 13 months of 28 days per month match up perfectly with the scriptures and God's divisions of the year. Jubilee 623. And on the new moon of the first month, and on the new moon of the 4th month, and on the new moon of the 7th month, and on the new moon of the 10th month, are the days of remembrance, and the days of the seasons in the 4 divisions of the year. These are written and ordained as a testimony forever. When you sit back and look at it and think about it, you realize that it's neither complicated nor confusing. You know that our Heavenly Father established a 7-day week with 52 weeks in a year, resulting in 364 days for a year, as well as 13 months with 28 days each. 4 divisions of the year overlap with the seasons and are defined as 13 weeks long. Given the simplicity and beauty of God's design for the world, one cannot help but wonder what happened. To begin, what is your favorite holiday? St. Valentine's Day? The day for lovers and buying chocolates? Or perhaps Independence Day? Everyone agrees with being independent from British rule. Perhaps Halloween for all that free candy and opportunity to dress up like a monster or someone you idolize, or simply covet. Surely many of us have enjoyed family traditions such as the lighting of the Christmas tree or the slicing of the Thanksgiving turkey. Clearly, these are traditions passed down from your enslaved ancestors who annually got together with the family from neighboring plantations to take a break from their master's cotton fields. Or you can't forego the tradition for the children, of course, of the dyeing of eggs, allegedly laid by a rabbit, for Easter. I know, it's a harmless tradition. You sing songs to a tree, or a rabbit, or a jolly old elf. Like, here comes Santa Claus right down Santa Claus Lane, or here comes Peter Cottontail hopping down the bunny trail, or old Christmas tree. But you give thanks to God Almighty. Mark 7, 6-7. Well, hath Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, This people honored me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Oh, I know. Don't criticize the tradition. After all, God knows that in your heart you are thankful for the new year, His birth, His death, and resurrection. In fact, you're doing it in remembrance of Him anyway. Mark 7, verse 9. And He said unto them, Full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition. I can appreciate doing things in remembrance of Christ, but His commandment, what He told us, is clear. In 1 Corinthians, and when He had given thanks, He brake it and said, Take, eat, this is my body which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After the same manner also He took the cup when He had supped, saying, This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye as oft as ye drink it, in remembrance of me. Our Heavenly Father said it broadly in Jeremiah 10, verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, Learn not the way of the heathen. Tragically, we did not do the word of our Father, who being the Most High knew, in Jubilee 6:35, For I know, and from henceforth will I declare it unto thee, and it is not of my own devising, for the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feast of the covenant, and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles, after their error, and after their ignorance. Indeed, as it is written, as a child of the Most High, you have replaced the Lord's covenant feasts and Sabbaths with all manner of feasts of the Gentiles. I'd like to provide a summary of the true calendar, as well as provide some dates for the year 2021 as a convenience. As you begin to understand God's true calendar of the world, you come to also realize that the spring equinox has to be in the last month, in the last week, on the last day of the year. Indeed, it concludes the fourth division of the year. We can then count based on the number of days on God's calendar to find the equivalent date on man's calendar. Although to convert from the Gregorian calendar to the true calendar just requires you to count, you still have to start counting from the correct day and date. This is simplified when the equinox is a Saturday, as it is for March 20th, 2021. This rare occurrence aligns with God's design, making March 21st a Sunday and correctly the first day of the week. From the equinox, the next day plus 1 is the first day of the year and spring. On the 14th day of the year, or 14 days from the equinox, is the Lord's Passover. Likewise, on the 169th day of the year, or 169 days since the equinox, is the Day of Trumpets. 178 days, the Day of Atonement, and 183 days takes you to Tabernacles. So what is the equivalent date for 2021? For convenience, I've done the counting and inserted the dates here. The first day is March 21st. The Lord's Passover is April 3rd. Unleavened Bread feast that week is April 4th through the 10th. The Day of Trumpets, September 5th. The Day of Atonement, September 14th. Tabernacles, followed by the Week of Tabernacles, is September 19th and September 20th through 25th. As for the Feast of First Fruits and Ingathering associated with the crops, they are roughly at the end of the months, so around July, August, and October, respectively. Again, based upon the crops. The days of remembrance occur on the first new moon of the respective months on the true calendar. Now, unfortunately, these tend to be from about the middle of one Gregorian month to the middle of the next. However, because the Gregorian months are not consistent and also longer than the true months, by the time we reach the last day of remembrance, it's largely the month of December. Brothers and sisters, this is a special year given the alignment of the dates. But despite the challenges of this world and dealing with man's calendar, I pray that this teaching proves helpful and insightful to you as you seek to turn back to our Heavenly Father, Yah. In the coming years, prior to the return and gathering, seek Yah. Romans 12:2. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. The Almighty God, the Ancient of Days, the everlasting God, the Creator, has chosen you. He knows your name. He knows the year. He knows the day. He knows the second. Turn away from the wicked. Discard the abominations. Be no longer vain but humble. Be no longer disobedient but full of faith. God is turning his face back to his people. He is awakening his people. He is returning knowledge to his people. He is preparing his people. And again, he tells us directly, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land.